A 6-year-old beauty queen, found dead in her own basement, on Christmas morning. And before the police even found her body, they found something stranger. A ransom note. 2.5 pages long. Written inside the house, on the family's own notepad, with the family's own pen. It demanded exactly $118,000. That number wasn't random. It was almost identical to the bonus her father had just received at work. The killer knew that number. Which means the killer knew this family. For almost 30 years, 3 words have haunted this case: intruder or insider. And somebody in that house on December 26, 1996, has never told the whole truth. Some files get closed. This one never did. December 26, 1996. Boulder, Colorado. It's a wealthy neighborhood, the kind with iron gates and Christmas lights still glowing from the night before. Patsy Ramsey wakes up early. The house still smells like pine and wrapping paper. She walks downstairs to make coffee, and that's when she sees it. A note. Sitting on the spiral staircase. She doesn't read it carefully at first. Not really. Because the first line makes her stomach drop before she even finishes the page. Listen carefully. We are a group of individuals. Her daughter, 6-year-old JonBenét, is gone. Patsy starts screaming. Her husband John comes running. And within minutes, they've called 911. Not the FBI, not a private investigator. 911, a local dispatch line, in a town that hadn't seen a murder in years. The note said not to call police. They called anyway. And that single decision would shape everything that came after. Police arrive fast. Friends of the family show up too. Because in small, tight-knit Boulder, the Ramseys knew everyone on the force personally. That detail matters. Keep it in your back pocket. For the next several hours, the house fills with people. Friends. Clergy. Officers who are more used to noise complaints than kidnappings. Nobody seals the scene. Nobody separates the family. People wander in and out of rooms that should have been locked down within minutes. By the time actual crime scene investigators show up, the scene isn't a crime scene anymore. It's a house that's already been touched by a dozen hands. And somewhere in that house, in a small room in the basement that almost nobody used, JonBenét was already there the entire time. Let's talk about that ransom note. Because once you actually read it, something feels off immediately. It's long. Almost 3 full pages. Real kidnappers, the ones who actually plan and execute abductions for money, don't usually write novels. They write short, cold, functional demands. Get the money. Don't call police. Wait for instructions. This note reads more like a performance. It name-drops movies. Lines that sound pulled straight from Hollywood thrillers. It refers to foreign faction, then randomly switches to sounding almost apologetic in tone. It even signs off with the initials SBTC, which investigators still can't fully explain. And here's the detail that still gives investigators chills decades later. The notepad it was written on. It belonged to Patsy Ramsey. Pulled from inside the house. The pen. Also from inside the house. Someone sat inside this family's home, calmly writing a 2.5-page letter, while a child lay dead nearby. That's not the profile of a stranger who broke in, grabbed a kid, and ran. That's the profile of someone who felt comfortable. Someone who had time. Handwriting experts were brought in almost immediately. They compared the note to samples from John Ramsey, from Patsy Ramsey, even from their 9-year-old son, Burke. None of them were ever conclusively matched to the note. But, not conclusively matched isn't the same as cleared. And that ambiguity, it's exactly what kept this case circling the same 3 people for years. This is the part of the case that's hardest to say out loud. But it's the part that changed everything about how investigators viewed this crime. JonBenét's body was found hours after the note, not by police searching methodically, but by her own father. John Ramsey was asked by a detective to search the house one more time. He went down to that small basement room, and found her there, beneath a blanket. The autopsy would later reveal 2 things that reshaped the entire case. First, she'd suffered a skull fracture, consistent with a heavy blow. Second, there was evidence of strangulation, using a cord tied to a broken paintbrush, a paintbrush that matched art supplies already inside the house. The rope, the paintbrush, the notepad, the pen. Every weapon used in this crime already belonged to this family. Nothing was brought in from outside. This is where the intruder theory starts to crack for a lot of investigators. Because a stranger breaking into an unfamiliar house, in the dark, without knowing the layout, doesn't usually improvise a murder weapon out of a random paintbrush they found in a craft drawer. But someone who lived there. Someone who knew exactly where the art supplies were kept. That's a very different story. Within days, the tone of this investigation flips completely. The grieving parents on television, pleading for their daughter's killer to come forward, become the primary suspects in the eyes of Boulder police. And honestly, a lot of the public turned on them too. Part of it was the pageant footage. Home videos of JonBenét in full makeup, elaborate dresses, doing stage routines built for adult contestants. Footage that got replayed endlessly on national news, completely out of context, painting a picture that felt uncomfortable to millions of viewers. Part of it was Patsy's behavior on the 911 call, a call where she seems to hang up before the dispatcher finishes talking, something forensic audio analysts would dissect for years. And part of it was just statistics. In cases involving child homicide, family members are statistically the most common suspects. Investigators know that. So they looked at the Ramseys first. For over a decade, John and Patsy Ramsey lived under a cloud that never lifted. Patsy passed away in 2006, from cancer, never cleared, never charged, but never free of suspicion either. Then in 2008, something happened that nobody expected. Touch DNA, a relatively new forensic technique at the time, was run on JonBenét's clothing. It found male DNA. Unknown. Not matching John Ramsey. Not matching anyone in the family. In 2008, the Boulder District Attorney did something almost unheard of in an unsolved case this famous. She issued a formal, public apology to the Ramsey family, stating the DNA evidence effectively cleared them as suspects. 12 years. 12 years of being the most suspected parents in America. And the case had, at least officially, pointed away from them the entire time. But an apology doesn't answer the question everyone still wants answered. If not them, then who? And this is where the case gets even stranger. Because in 2006, 2 years before that apology, a man had already confessed to the murder. His name was John Mark Karr. John Mark Karr was arrested in Thailand, extradited back to the US with international media following every step, after telling authorities he was with JonBenét when she died, and that her death was, in his words, an accident. For a few days, the world thought the case was finally solved. Then his DNA came back. It didn't match the unknown male DNA from the crime scene at all. Karr had never even been in Colorado at the time of the murder. His confession fell apart under basic scrutiny. Investigators later suggested he may have had an unhealthy obsession with the case itself, inserting himself into a tragedy that wasn't his. So the case went cold again. Colder than before. And the DNA that actually was found at the scene? To this day, it's never been matched to anyone. There's one more thread in this case that true crime circles still argue about constantly. Burke Ramsey, JonBenét's older brother, was 9 years old the night she died. Some investigators, early in the case, floated a theory that a sibling altercation escalated tragically, and that the ransom note was staged afterward by desperate parents trying to protect their surviving child. Burke was never charged. Ever. A grand jury in 1999 actually voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on charges related to the case, a fact that stayed sealed and unknown to the public for over a decade, but the district attorney at the time refused to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence. Burke himself was never part of that indictment. He's spoken publicly since, defending his family, and has taken legal action against outlets that named him as a suspect. Legally, there is no evidence that has ever charged him with anything. But in true crime spaces, the theory refuses to die. Partly because of the physical evidence. Partly because, a case with no ending invites everyone to write their own.
Almost 30 years later, JonBenét Ramsey's murder remains officially unsolved.
The DNA sits in a database, waiting for a match that hasn't come. The note sits in an evidence file, its author still unknown. And a family that buried a 6-year-old girl on live television, never got the one thing they spent decades asking for. An answer. Somebody wrote that note inside her house, with her family's own pen. And whoever they are, they've been out there this entire time. This file stays open, but yours doesn't have to. Somewhere in this archive, another case is waiting to keep you up tonight. Don't stop here. If you think you know what really happened in that house, drop your theory below. I read every one of them.